Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I'm the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I would like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is on the visitor process in BNI Connect. We're going to talk about all the different things that BNI Connect can help you to do with your member, from invitation, inviting your member through an email, inviting visitors through an email, registering visitors before the meeting, and of course tracking your chapter visitors after the meeting and following up with them. All of these things BNI Connect can help to do to make your life just a little bit easier. And that's what we're going to be going over in today's webinar. Before we get started, there's a couple of housekeeping things that I'd like to go over, and that is that this is a live webinar. So if you have any questions as we're going through any of the content today, please do feel free to ask those questions. The easiest way to do that is to please type your questions into the questions panel. I'll see them pop up on my screen, and I will be able to answer them afterwards. This webinar is also being recorded. We always make our webinars available afterwards in a couple of different places. You can find them on the support site. And the easiest way to get to the support site is you see this little question mark in the upper right-hand corner, right below where it says Regional Website and Options. That will take you over to the support site. On the support site, we have a load of things. We have walkthroughs, we have the list of upcoming webinars, and then, of course, in the chapter training and documentation section, aside from all of the help documents, we also have recorded webinars. If you'd like to check them out, click on one of the months. They are arranged chronologically for you. So let's say I'm looking at September. I can see our entire webinar recorded schedule for the month of September, including one from visitors. You can also go directly to our support YouTube channel, and that is at youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. Up here, you'll not only see the recorded webinars, but a ton of other stuff as well. There's some special announcements from Dr. Meisner, and we also have a whole list of educational moments, short 3 to 5 minute videos on very specific topics that you can use to educate yourselves or your chapters. We have the whole archive of webinars as well as some other instructional videos up on our YouTube channel. But let's talk about today's content, and that again is visitors in BNI Connect. So let's take a look at the overview of the visitor process. So here's the flow of visitors, and by the way, this document, this PDF file that I have open temporarily, if you would like a copy of it, it is it's a 53-page manual on BNI Connect and visitors. If you'd like a copy of it, just email support@bniconnect.com. Again, support@bniconnect.com, and we will be happy to send you a copy of this document. But looking at it, here's the flow of visitors in BNI Connect. So before the meeting, we have inviting visitors. That's when we want to invite somebody to the meeting, and we can use BNI Connect to send out a custom invitation. I'm going to show you that in just a few seconds. Also, before the meeting, we can pre-register visitors, and that does a lot of great things. Most importantly, it's a more professional way to make sure that visitors are going to actually show up to your chapter meetings, rather than just bumping into somebody, hey, you want to come to a BNI meeting? Once they say yes, you can register them to go, or they can register themselves to go to the meeting. What's great about it is that it also starts an email chain. So the visitor, the prospective visitor, will get an email confirming their visit. They'll also get a reminder 2 days before the meeting, letting them know that the visit is coming up. It will also notify your leadership team, visitor hosts, and director consultant that somebody will be coming to the meeting. There's also reports that are generated from this so that you can see who's showing up to the meetings and possibly even follow up with them. So that's all before the meeting, and then after the meeting, we have the follow-up process. We can mark the visitors that showed up at the meeting as having attended, with much less data entry for the visitor hosts. And then for those that didn't pre-register, we can enter them into BNI Connect so that we can then follow up with them later. We can run reports, we can send emails, and all sorts of things like that. So Let's take a look at the visitor process. So the first step of this process is inviting visitors. And BNI Connect does have a way that you can do that. So let me flip back over to BNI Connect here. And let's take a look at where we would invite a visitor in BNI Connect. Now, a lot of people have said to me over the years, no, BNI Connect is not very user-friendly. I don't know where to find anything in BNI Connect. Here's my little hint for remembering how to find things. To get to some of the functions, I mean, obviously we're on the home screen here. This is our everyday things, such as submitting thank you for closed business or entering a referral slip, things like that. To get to some of the other functions, we will have to dig into the menus. Now, most people will see at least 3 menu items up here: network, operations, and reports. Now, network is all of the social media things. So that's where you're going to interact with other BNI members from around the world. You can do that through the discussion groups. You can connect with other members and also look at their profiles. You can give people testimonials. So that's all the social media stuff, and that's under the network. Now, that leaves us with operations and reports. Operations is where we do stuff. It's where we can create stuff. It's where the vice presidents are going to go and enter the weekly data for the POMS report. Reports is where we're going to pull information back out. So they're all static reports that feed back information. So if we want to do stuff, if we want to create something, for example, we want to send a visitor invitation, we're going to look under the operations menu. So I'm going to go to operations and then the chapter level menu. Now, once we get here, you'll notice that one of the options down towards the bottom is Create Email. That's where we're going to go to create an email to a visitor. And once we get here, you'll see 3 options: Email My Chapter, Email Visitor Invitation, and Email Chapter Visitors. If we would like to send an invitation to a visitor, we're going to use the Email Visitor Invitation option. Now, what this is basically it's a template that we are going to enter a couple of pieces of information. It's going to then take this information and put it into a predefined system template. Now, your region, your executive directors, they're the ones that create the visitor template, so it will have a lot of default verbiage in it. If you'd like to see updates to that, please do talk to your executive director. But let's take a look at what this looks like. So if I was, let's say, out at a networking event, or I was talking to somebody on the phone and mentioned BNI, and they say, hey, you want to come to a BNI meeting? They say, sure, yeah, just send me an invitation. Here's how we would do that. So first we just put in their name. So let's say I'm inviting John Smith from Smithco, and we enter their email address. Now, I'm going to enter my own personal email address here so you guys can see what this invitation looks like. And you're welcome to try this on yourself if you'd like to. Send yourself an invitation so that you can see what it looks like. Now, the personal message is going to be the first paragraph of this templated email. So you do want to make it so that it's somewhat, well, I guess, personal, so that you can reach out to the person and it's your words that will be used in this first paragraph. Now, I usually like to use something like, it was great to meet you at the networking event. I would love to introduce you to my referral team. Now again, when I click send, it's going to take this information and put it into a custom template that's defined on the back end and immediately send it to that email address that I chose. Now in just a second, I should get that invitation in my email, and I'll be able to show you what it looks like. And here it is. So here's the invitation that I just sent. You'll notice that it has a nice BNI graphic at the top of it. If anybody's familiar with the postcards that we have often sent to invite people to BNI, that's what is up here in the top portion. Then if you scroll down into the words, you'll have, Dear John, it was great to meet you at the networking event. I'd love to introduce you to my referral team. So that's the custom text that you can put into the email. The rest of the information is automatically inserted based on the system itself. So the first part, it will automatically insert your chapter name. So you're cordially invited to the meeting of the BNI Burr chapter, where we're located at the Cool Breeze Cafe at 11 Snowball Court Banquet Room. And it gives us the day and the time that we meet. It also lets them know that BNI is a business and professional networking organization. So it does the hard work of very, very quickly, briefly, concisely explaining what BNI is. And that's something that a lot of times we struggle with, is coming up with the words to describe what BNI is to somebody that might not be familiar with it. It then lets them know that they're looking for somebody in their profession and to RSVP with you. Lets them know to bring plenty of business cards, and it signs it from you and from your company name. Now, if they reply to this email, the reply to address is set as your email address. So if I do hit reply, this will go back to your email address that is listed on your profile. A couple of things about the invitation. The data that you're inputting is not saved in any way. This was just meant as a means to get a quick custom invitation. You do have to send them one at a time, so there's no way to do a bulk send of the emails. And unfortunately, because we're not saving any of the information, there's also no reports or anything associated with the invitation. But it is a great way to get a quick custom email out inviting people, saying just the right things to entice them to come to a meeting. All right, so let's say that you've sent this invitation out. The next step of the process is, after you've invited a visitor, you can also pre-register a visitor for an upcoming meeting. And as I was saying before, there's a couple of really great benefits for doing that. The first of which is that, again, it is a much more professional presentation of your meeting. A lot of times we'll invite somebody casually to a meeting only to find out that they didn't show up to that meeting. And usually it's just because they're not really aware that they're expected to be at the meeting. By pre-registering them, it helps to set that professional expectation that they should be coming, that a seat has been reserved for them at this upcoming meeting. Now, there's two different ways that we can pre-register a visitor for an upcoming meeting. The first way is that you can do it as a member, so you can pre-register somebody for the upcoming meeting. The second way is that a visitor could actually pre-register themselves through your regional website or through your chapter website. So let's take a look at those two different ways. So the first way that you can pre-register a visitor is, again, we're under the operations menu still, and this is where we go to do data input. So we're going to be under operations, and the very first item up here is manage visitors. Under here we have the option to register a prospective visitor. So again, this is to register somebody for a future meeting. Now, all we really need to do is to fill out this form with as much information as you have. So the first thing we'll do is we'll choose a visit date. Now, we'll only let you choose future dates because we are pre-registering them for a future meeting. So let's say they wanted to come this week, we could choose the 22nd, or if they say they wanted to come next week, we could choose that following week, or of course any meeting in the future. So I'm going to choose this week's meeting, and then we can put in their information. So let's say this was John Smith from Smith Co. If I have their address information, maybe I'm working off of a business card or something, I can put that in. Now, the more information you have that you can input now, the easier your visitor host's job is going to be later, because when they go to record that the visitor attended, all the information will be in there already. And phone number is a mandatory field, as well as email address. And again, the email address is mandatory because this does start an email process both with your chapter and with the visitor. So as soon as I click submit here, a couple of things are going to happen. The first thing is it's going to register this person for that upcoming meeting in the system. It's going to send an email to this person, to this email address here, which happens to be my own email address. Oh, I do need to grab a specialty and a profession. So it is going to immediately send an email letting that person know that they are registered to visit that chapter meeting. But it also sends an email out immediately to some other people. It does send an email. So here's my email that I just received. Hi, John, you are confirmed to visit this chapter meeting. Lets me know what the date and time of the meeting is. Please plan to be there for the full 90 minutes. It summarizes all the details over here on the left-hand side as well. Now, as I said, I also have myself registered as on the leadership team of that chapter. And in my Gmail here, I did receive a notification saying that John Smith is confirmed to visit the BNI Burr chapter. So the people that get this confirmation are the leadership team, so the president, the vice president, and the secretary-treasurer. Also, the visitor host. So all the visitor hosts in your chapter are notified that a visitor will be coming. And finally, my director consultant will also get a message. So there's some great things you can do with this. Now I have the visitor's name, their phone number, and their email address. Wouldn't it be great if we pre-followed up with this visitor? Maybe saying, hey, I just noticed that you registered to visit the meeting. I can't wait to meet you. By the way, I noticed that you're a speaker. I would love to introduce you to the business consultant in the group or to the business attorney in the group or other people that they might be interested to meet. Maybe I even want to let the business consultant and the business attorney know that a speaker is going to be visiting this week so that they're prepared to meet this visitor. The more contacts you can make with these potential visitors and the more welcome you can make them feel before the chapter meeting, the greater the chance that they will end up coming to the meeting and possibly applying to become a long-term member of your chapter. Now, I did mention that there's a second way to register visitors for the upcoming meeting, and that is through your regional website. So let me take a look. I'm going to go up to my Antarctica, my antarcticreferrals.com. This is our website for our Antarctica region up there. So how would a visitor, let's say that a visitor heard about BNI or they were directed to the regional website. They might be looking to visit a chapter, so they probably go to find a chapter and take a look at the chapters in the area. They say, all right, well, let's see. We've got the Chili Hillbillies and the Cold Hard Cash, and, well, it looks like the Burr chapter meets on Wednesdays. That's a convenient time for me, so I'm going to go take a look at this chapter. They could take a look at all of the members, maybe look at their profiles. I can see that Art Garfunkel and Alfred E. Newman are in this chapter. I probably want to go visit this one. So they could do a couple of things. They can go check out the chapter website, or they can click on this button that says Visit This Chapter. Once they click on Visit This Chapter, this is, for all intents and purposes, the same form that we just filled out on the inside of BNI Connect. Really, the only difference is that they can fill out who invited them, whereas they assume that it's you that invited them when you're filling it out on the inside of BNI Connect, and they are asked to input a CAPTCHA code. That's just to make sure that we don't have a bunch of internet robots filling out the information and registering visitors for us. But filling out the form on the regional website, or if they were to go to, let's say, the chapter website, they could click on Visit Chapter, and again, it's the same form. So once your visitors are registered for your upcoming meeting, there are some supporting reports and processes for this. So as I said, there is a registered visitor report Now, I would find that by going to, well, Reports. I'm going to go to Reports. And here, if I scroll down to the bottom of the list, I can see that there is a Visitor Registration Report. And if I click on the Visitor Registration Report, first it'll show me, by default, it's going to show me the next week's worth of upcoming visitors. So today plus 7 days, which should cover my next chapter meeting. But I can also, let's say that I'm having a Visitors Day coming up in 3, 4, or 5 weeks. We could change this to be any date range we'd like. Let's say I'd like to see all of my upcoming visitors through the end of November. I can do that. Once I click Go, it will then give me a nice list, and I can see that right now we only have one registered visitor for my Burr chapter up there in Antarctica. I can see all of this person's information. Now, if I'd like to, I can also export this, and you'll notice this report tells me that there's further information available when I export this report. I usually choose Export without headers because it'll just it'll exclude all of this top information and only include the bottom information. I can then open this up in Excel. And when I have this in Excel, you'll notice that it does include some additional information, such as the address information. It also lets me know who invited this person. Now, this is great for people that might also use a secondary tracking system, or if somebody uses, I know that a lot of chapters might use send-out cards and things like that. You can use this information to populate that as well. All right, so that's the first 2 steps of the process. So those are the things that are happening before the meeting. So we have the invitation that we did. We then pre-registered our visitors, and we were able to go in and use the visitor registration report to see our list of upcoming visitors. Now, finally, we have the meeting. Now, at the meeting, you're on your own, but after the meeting, there are a couple of steps if we want to follow this through to completion. And that is that for all of the visitors that did pre-register for the meeting, either by us pre-registering them in BNI Connect or by the visitor registering themselves through the website, we need to make sure that we mark them as having attended the meeting. Or maybe there's a visitor that said, oh, you know what, I couldn't make it this week, or I can't make it tomorrow. Can I please reschedule for another meeting? I'll tell you, that's been one of the biggest benefits that I've seen, is that if a visitor, if they weren't pre-registered, so before this functionality was available, if a visitor didn't show up to the meeting, a lot of times they might be embarrassed about it. And they may avoid following back up with somebody from the chapter. They might not know who to follow up with. One of the benefits that this does is it gives them the opportunity to get back in touch with you and say, you know what, I couldn't make the meeting, my kids were sick, or whatever else might be, and then reschedule for an upcoming meeting. So it kind of helps to break that ice a little bit. So let's take a look. How do we then either mark them as attended, or how do we add visitors that might not have pre-registered but still come to the meeting? So let's take a look at that process. Now, to manage or work with our visitors and not just see the static list, we need to go back to Operations. So I'm going to go to Operations. And we're going to go under this Visitor Management again. Now, there's 2 different things. There's the top 2 options here have to do with visitors that were not pre-registered. So they might be visitors that were just showed up at the meeting. Now, we do want to add those visitors in whenever we can. But the first thing we want to do, and if you happen to be a visitor host or the person that's responsible for managing the visitors at a chapter meeting, the first thing we always want to do is make sure that we check against our registered visitors to see if they were listed. So I do that by clicking on Manage Registered Visitors. I can put in a date range or a name if I'm searching for somebody specific. If I'd like to just see all of them, I click Go. And this will show me all of the people that have registered but possibly not attended either yet or they didn't show up to the chapter meetings. So we do have, let's see, I'm going to do a search here just in this little mini search box for John Smith. And it looks like John Smith has registered a number of times to visit this chapter. I can then sort it, let's say, by visit date. And let's say that last week's meeting, he was registered to come to the meeting, and he did show up. So I'm going to go in and edit this visitor record, this pre-registered visitor record. And what we see here is we now have the option to mark them as attended. So I can check this to confirm that they attended the meeting. And then I also now am presented with the option of whether or not I would like to add this to the PALMS report. So some cases where you may not want to add them to the PALMS report is maybe it's their second visit or their third visit or their fourth visit, or maybe they were a member in another chapter and they're not eligible to put in an application to this chapter. It's important to make sure that if they're not an eligible visitor, to make sure that you exclude them from the PALMS report, because that will affect certain statistics, such as your traffic lights and conversion ratio. But I can then review all the information. If necessary, I can also change the date of the visit. And finally, I have the option down at the bottom to send them a follow-up email. Now, the follow-up email will thank them for visiting the chapter. Now, sometimes you may not wish to send a follow-up email. For example, if they're already a BNI member, they may not need to receive that extra email in their inbox. Or perhaps you're a little bit behind on the data entry. Maybe you're 2, 3, 4 weeks behind on the data entry, and you might be a little bit embarrassing for them to get that thank you for visiting email when they visited 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. So once I verify this information is correct, I'm going to make sure that the proper person is given credit for inviting and click Submit. Now I should get a thank you for visiting email. And now this person, it will go in, he'll be taken out of the registered visitors list and put into our visitor database. And here was my thank you email. Thank you for recently visiting the BNI Bird chapter and the visit date, some of the added benefits, and a bunch more information there. Now, if the person did not pre-register, but you still like to record their visit to the chapter, make sure that you click on the Add Visitor button here. That will add a non-pre-registered visitor to your visitor database. Of course, you can always do that from, if I go back to the Operations menu, I can always just click on the Add a Visitor button. And of course, this is pretty much the same form. It does allow us to choose whether or not to add them to the PALMS report, and at the bottom, whether or not we choose to send them a follow-up email. Once we've started adding visitors to the system, we have some additional follow-up things that we can do. Of course, we can go back to Create Email. If we'd like to just send out a bulk email to our chapter visitors, we can do that. We can do a search on certain dates. Let's say where you want to send a visitor follow-up, or let's say that we want to invite all visitors from the past 6 months to this networking business after hours event that the chapter is hosting. So I can go back to, let's say, January, choose Next, and this will give me an email list of all of the chapter visitors. I can then copy and paste those into my own email program. The other thing it does give me is reports. So if I go back to my reports menu, I do have a chapter visitor report. So if I scroll down a little bit, I have a chapter visitor report. I can choose a start date and end date. Let's say I go back to January again and click Go. And here's all the visitors that have visited my BNI Burr chapter. Of course, I can export this if I'd like to get the addresses out to send them, a thank you card for coming. I could also get their email addresses from here once I export this. But this allows us to keep a visitor database. It allows us to follow up with our visitors and also go back and maybe reach out to visitors that might not have come back. All right, so we are at the bottom of the hour. What I'd like to do is to thank everybody for being here today. And also at this point, I would like to open it up to any questions. Even though we do try to keep the content to a half hour on these webinars, I am always happy to stay and answer questions about the visitor process or about anything in BNI Connect. And I will stay here until every single question is answered. So please do. Now is the time to ask questions. While you're thinking up any questions, just a couple of reminders. Again, this webinar is being recorded and it will be made available up on our YouTube channel. Again, that is youtube.com/BNI Connect Global, youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. You will see a copy of this webinar up there from last month already, and this month's copy should be up there within, probably towards the end of the week. In addition, I would love it if you gave us a like on Facebook. We do a ton of announcements and other things through our Facebook channel as well, including a reminder about today's webinar. So please do give us a like up on Facebook. I would love that. And finally, if you have any additional questions about today's webinar, a couple of things. You can always go to the support site. The support site does have all of this information in various help documents. You can access it by clicking this question mark here to go to the main support site. Or if you have a question about a specific thing, you can always click the little question mark in front of it. So let's say I'd like to teach my chapter how to register a prospective visitor. I can click on this question mark, and this will open up the specific help document for that function. All right, do we have any questions at all? All right, if there's no additional questions, again, thank you all so much for being here with me today. If you found today's webinar helpful, or you like this format for learning, we do have a ton of webinars scheduled. We go through the whole BNI Connect process on a monthly basis. Our very next webinar will be on Wednesday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and that will be on maintaining your chapter website. And then in November, we start the series all over again. So please do share these dates, share these links with your chapter members, and I'd love to get all the knowledge out of our heads and into yours. So, we do have a question. Let's say Steve says, I have not pre-registered visitors. We are a new chapter. Can I go back and register them? So for the visitors that have attended already, Steve, you can use the visitor, just the add a visitor process for that. So again, if I go back into BNI Connect here, and I go to Operations Chapter, so for people that have already showed up to the meeting, use this add a visitor to start building your visitor database. If you need to pre-register them for upcoming meetings, meaning they haven't showed up yet, the meeting hasn't happened yet, that's when you would want to register them as a prospective visitor. So you don't want to add people that have already shown up to the meeting as a prospective visitor, because then they probably will get confused thinking that they're being invited to another meeting when they've already come. Does that make sense, Steve? Excellent. All right. Do you have any additional questions? Steve says you have them in the Mars system. So yeah, the Mars system is a completely different third-party system that doesn't connect directly with BNI Connect. There's no API or anything like that. to share the information. So if you are using a Mars system and this system, then you would have to do double entry at that point. So sorry about that one, Steve. All right. I'm not seeing any additional questions. So again, I'm going to thank everybody for being here today, and I look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Thank you so much, everybody, and happy connecting.